The mop hit Marcus Cole's chest before he saw it coming. 50 workers froze mid-motion across the hangar floor.
I said
Tools
no,
suspended,
and that's final.
Conversations
We do this
dying
my
in their
way.
throats. Sophia Hart stood 3 feet away, her Armani suit sharp as a blade under the industrial lights, arms still extended from the throw. The sound of the metal handle clattering on concrete echoed off steel walls designed to swallow the roar of jet engines. She was 34 years old and looked like her father in ways that made people uncomfortable. Same severe jawline, same eyes that calculated profit margins while you were still reaching for a handshake. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it could have been carved from ice. The workers called her the Ice Queen when they thought management wasn't listening. They weren't wrong. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there in his maintenance uniform, blue fabric worn soft at the elbows, name stitched above the pocket in thread that had faded from navy to gray. 36 years old, shoulders that still carried the memory of better days, hands that had once held scalpels and flight sticks now gripping a bucket of industrial cleaner. His daughter Lily sat in the corner behind a tool cart, 9 years old with her mother's brown curls and a notebook full of airplane drawings clutched against her chest. Tears streamed down her face. The incident report would later state that Lily Cole had wandered into a restricted testing zone, that she'd touched classified equipment, military prototypes worth more than every paycheck Marcus would earn in 3 lifetimes combined, that security protocols had been breached, that immediate disciplinary action was required. The report wouldn't mention that Lily had been drawing in her corner for 2 hours while Marcus cleaned, that the restricted zone door had been propped open by engineers too lazy to badge in and out, that a 9-year-old girl curious about the machines her father worked around every day had simply walked through an open door. Sophia's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel through skin. "You think you belong here?" Marcus bent down, picked up the mop. The handle was still warm from where it had struck him. She stepped closer. The scent of expensive perfume, something French, something that cost more than his monthly rent, mixed with the smell of machine oil and aviation fuel that permeated everything in Vanguard Aerospace's primary facility. "You know what your problem is?" Her voice pitched louder, meant for the audience now. "You think because you show up every day, because you push that mop around, because you bring your kid to work like this is some kind of daycare, you think that makes you valuable?" Someone coughed. Derek Kane, the CFO, emerged from the group of executives clustered near the prototype. 42 years old, MIT educated, suit that probably cost $5,000. His smile was the kind surgeons use when explaining terminal diagnoses to families who couldn't afford second opinions. "Maybe we should—" "Shut up, Derek." Sophia didn't take her eyes off Marcus. "I want him to hear this. I want everyone to hear this." She pivoted, addressing the hangar. Engineers in cleanroom suits, technicians with tablets, security guards trying to decide if they should intervene. Owen Foster stood at the back, 63 years old with a gray beard and a limp from a helicopter crash in '86, the most senior engineer at Vanguard, the only man in the room who'd known Jonathan Hart when he was building aircraft in a garage instead of corporate empires. This man, Sophia's gesture encompassed Marcus like he was evidence in a trial. This janitor let his daughter wander into a restricted testing zone. She was touching the Apex prototype, military equipment, $400 million of American aerospace engineering. Lily's sob carried across the concrete. Marcus's hands tightened on the mop handle. His knuckles went white, then whiter. The tendons stood out like cables under skin that had seen too much sun in places with names most Americans couldn't pronounce. "She's 9 years old." His voice came out quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made people lean in. "She's a liability." Sophia turned back to him. "And so are you." The words hung in the recycled air. Marcus could feel 50 pairs of eyes on him, could feel the weight of their pity, their relief that it wasn't them standing here, their quiet gratitude that someone else was being destroyed today. He thought about his hands, the ones that used to hold surgical instruments steady while helicopters shook from enemy fire. The ones that used to grip flight sticks at 30,000 feet, threading through sandstorms that sent better pilots running for ground. The ones that couldn't hold his wife's hand when she died because nerve damage from Kandahar shrapnel had stolen the ability to feel texture, to sense the warmth of living skin against his palm. He thought about Lily, About the half sandwich she'd saved from lunch yesterday because she knew money was tight and didn't want him spending extra. About shoes he'd been meaning to replace for 3 months, soles worn through to cardboard he'd cut from delivery boxes. About the notebook she'd shown him last night, pages full of jet engine designs, her voice bright with a hope that made his chest ache. Maybe I can work here someday, Daddy. Maybe I can build planes. The memory of Elena surfaced unbidden, his wife in the hospital bed, skin gone gray, machines beeping their countdown to the inevitable. Her last words weren't, I love you, or take care of our daughter. They were, you are enough, Marcus. You've always been enough. He hadn't believed her then. Hadn't believed her for 5 years since. Watching her die while his hands, useless, damaged hands, couldn't even hold her properly, had carved something out of him that never grew back. Derek Kane laughed, small sound, controlled. The laugh of a man who enjoyed watching others bleed and had the breeding to keep the enjoyment subtle. Marcus set the mop against a tool cart. The motion was deliberate, measured. The kind of precision that came from years of making every movement count because sloppy meant dead and dead meant your team went home in boxes. You done? His voice hadn't gotten louder, still that same quiet, but something in it made Sophia blink. Excuse me? I asked if you were done because when you're finished telling me everything I'm not, I'd like to tell you something about that jet. He pointed to the Apex prototype behind the glass partition. $400 million of aerospace engineering, sleek and lethal, painted in radar-absorbing gray that cost more per gallon than most people earned in a week. The future of Vanguard Industries. The make-or-break demonstration scheduled for Thursday that would determine whether Sophia Hart kept her father's company or lost it to circling board members who smelled blood in the water. What about it? Her voice could have flash-frozen nitrogen. It's going to explode. The hangar went silent, not the silence of before when 50 people held their breath watching a public execution. This was different. This was the silence of a record scratch, of a universe hiccuping, of reality taking a sharp left turn into territory nobody had mapped. Derek Kane stopped smiling. Owen Foster's tablet slipped from his fingers, clattered on concrete. Sophia stared at Marcus like he'd grown a second head, one that spoke in tongues and prophesied the apocalypse. What did you just say? The Apex prototype. Your engineers installed the secondary exhaust valve backwards. The words came out flat, factual. The tone mechanics used explaining why your car wouldn't start, why the repair would cost more than the vehicle was worth. That's insane, but her voice had lost its edge. It happens when teams rush, when leadership pushes deadlines instead of safety. Marcus met her eyes, no malice, no satisfaction, just tired recognition of a pattern he'd seen before in places where mistakes measured in body counts instead of dollar signs. On the ground, it reads as a minor pressure deviation, 2% above tolerance. Nothing your automated systems would flag. But at 20,000 feet, that reversed valve creates a feedback loop in the combustion chamber. Pressure builds, temperature spikes. Somewhere between minute 3 and minute 5 of your Pentagon demonstration, he spread his hands. Boom! Sophia's face went from ice queen white to something closer to corpse gray. You're a janitor. Check the valve. Security. Her voice cracked like a teenager's, control slipping. Get this man out of my facility, now. 2 guards moved forward. Marcus didn't resist. He'd said what needed saying. The rest was up to her. Up to men with engineering degrees and clearances and reputations to protect. Up to a system that valued credentials over experience, titles over truth. But Owen Foster stepped out of the crowd before the guards could reach Marcus. 63 years old, gray beard, eyes that had seen things in Vietnam that woke him up screaming 4 decades later. The most senior engineer at Vanguard. The man who'd taught half the people in this room everything they knew about aircraft that could kill you 6 different ways before breakfast. Wait. The guard stopped. Sophia's head snapped toward Owen with the kind of fury reserved for subordinates who forgot their place. Owen's fingers moved across his tablet screen. The facility had gone so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the air conditioning pushing recycled air through industrial vents, someone's watch ticking in the back row. Owen's face went pale. Not the healthy pale of someone who spent too much time indoors. The bloodless pale of a man who'd just seen his own death certificate, signed, sealed, delivered. Miss Hart, his voice shook. First time in 30 years anyone had heard Owen Foster's voice shake. The secondary exhaust valve. Sophia's perfectly manicured hand gripped the edge of a workbench. Knuckles went white. What about it? He's right. Owen looked up from his tablet, not at Sophia, at Marcus. Something in his expression shifted. Calculation, recognition, the pieces of a puzzle clicking into place behind eyes that had diagnosed 1,000 problems in 1,000 aircraft. It's reversed. We checked the specs against the installation. Nobody verified the physical alignment. If we'd run that demonstration, he couldn't finish the sentence. The color drained from Sophia's face like someone had opened a valve. She gripped the workbench harder. Her other hand came up, pressed against her forehead, fingers digging into perfect skin that probably had never known acne or uncertainty or fear. That's impossible. We checked the specifications. Owen's interruption was gentle but final. Nobody physically verified the installation. The valve passed automated testing because the pressure differential at ground level falls within tolerances. But at altitude, he looked back at his tablet, scrolling through data that confirmed what Marcus had seen in 3 seconds. At altitude, the reversed flow would create exactly the cascade he described. Derek Kane stepped forward, smartphone already out, fingers moving across the screen with the speed of a man who just calculated how to weaponize a crisis. His smile had returned, smaller now, sharper. Owen turned back to Marcus. The question was naked in his eyes, unspoken but clear to anyone who'd spent time around men who measured their worth in problems solved rather than credentials earned. How did you know? Marcus pulled his arms free from the security guards who'd frozen mid-escort, straightened his uniform. The fabric was still damp where the mop handle had struck him, leaving a dark streak across the Vanguard Aerospace logo that some marketer had probably spent 6 figures designing. Lucky guess. He walked to where Lily still sat crying, her corner sanctuary behind the tool cart, took her hand. Come on, sweetheart. Time to go home. They walked through the crowd that parted like water around stones. 50 workers who'd watched him get destroyed 5 minutes ago now couldn't meet his eyes. Some looked ashamed. Most looked confused. A few looked scared, the kind of scared that came from realizing the world didn't work the way they'd been promised it would, that sometimes the guy pushing the mop knew more than the guy signing the paychecks. The bus stop was 2 blocks from the Vanguard facility. Marcus and Lily sat on the metal bench that had been sun-baked hot enough to sear skin through denim. Los Angeles in October could still hit 90 degrees, especially out here in the industrial sprawl, where aerospace companies clustered like tumors on the edge of the desert. Traffic passed in waves, rush hour starting early on a Tuesday, everyone trying to beat everyone else home to neighborhoods they couldn't afford, families they barely saw, lives measured in commute times and overtime pay. The sky was the color of old bruises, smog caught between mountains and ocean, particulate matter from 10 million cars suspended in air that tasted like burnt rubber and broken promises. Lily hadn't said a word since they left. Her face was still red from crying, nose running, the notebook clutched against her chest like armor against a world that suddenly felt a lot less safe than it had this morning when she'd drawn happy little jet engines in the margins. Marcus watched the traffic pass, a semi hauling parts for Boeing, a Tesla with license plate frame advertising some tech startup that would be bankrupt in 6 months, a pickup truck that looked older than Lily, exhaust belching black smoke that the driver probably couldn't afford to fix. Daddy. Her voice was small, 9 years old, trying to sound braver than she felt. Yeah, sweetheart? Why did that lady hate you so much? Marcus watched a crow pick at roadkill in the median, tried to find words that wouldn't break his daughter's heart, wouldn't teach her that the world was crueler than she needed to know at 9 years old. She doesn't hate me, Maya. Her name's Lily, Daddy. A small correction. Gentle. She was used to him mixing things up when he was tired. Right. Sorry, sweetheart. He squeezed her hand. Elena used to call their unborn daughter Maya. They changed it to Lily 2 days before she was born, Elena's grandmother's name, a last-minute decision that felt right. But sometimes when he was exhausted, Running on 4 hours of sleep and working double shifts, the old name slipped out. That lady doesn't hate me, she's scared. Scared of what? Of falling, of being weak, of looking in the mirror and seeing someone who isn't good enough. He looked down at his daughter, brown curls that caught the sunlight even through the smog, eyes that were Elena's exact shade of hazel green. When people are that scared, sometimes they hurt others to feel strong. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing. She'd always been too smart for her age, asking questions that made teachers uncomfortable. Seeing through adult lies with the clarity of someone who hadn't learned yet that sometimes lies were kinder than truth. Is that why you didn't yell back? Partly. What's the other part? Marcus looked down at his daughter, 9 years old, but might as well be 20 with that expression. Her mother's stubbornness written in the set of her jaw, his own tendency towards silence and observation reflected in how she watched, waited, calculated. The other part is that yelling doesn't fix anything. It just makes noise. He crouched to her level, ignoring the protest from knees that had jumped out of too many helicopters in too many hostile territories. You want to know a secret? Lily nodded. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't flying jets or saving lives or any of the things people give medals for. He paused, weighing how much truth a 9-year-old could handle. The bravest thing I ever did was learn to stay quiet when everyone expected me to fight. That doesn't sound brave. Her honesty was brutal, unfiltered. That sounds sad. Marcus smiled. First time in weeks that the expression felt genuine instead of a mask worn for his daughter's benefit. Maybe it's both, sweetheart. Maybe the bravest thing usually are. The bus arrived in a cloud of diesel exhaust and hydraulic brake screech. They climbed on, found seats in the back. The vinyl was cracked and patched with duct tape, springs poking through foam that had given up pretending to provide comfort. Lily pulled out her notebook and started drawing. Marcus watched the city pass outside the window, strip malls and storage facilities, auto body shops with hand-painted signs in 3 languages, neighborhoods where houses cost $1 million but looked like they should cost $50,000. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him look. Maybe habit from years when unknown numbers meant missions, deployments, calls from bureaucrats deciding whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. The text was simple. I know who you are. We need to talk. Owen. Marcus stared at the screen, deleted the message. Owen Foster had been at Vanguard since before Marcus was born, had served in Vietnam as a helicopter mechanic, seen shit that made Afghanistan look like a training exercise. If Owen had figured something out, kept quiet this long, reaching out now meant something had changed. Something had shifted in the calculus that kept Marcus invisible. He typed back, not here, not now, somewhere safe. The response came instantly. Tomorrow, 5 a.m., old hangar before anyone else arrives. Marcus put the phone away. Looked at his daughter drawing a jet engine with remarkable detail for a 9-year-old. Labels and careful printing, identifying components she'd learned by watching, listening, absorbing everything around her with the kind of intelligence that should have been in advanced placement programs instead of sitting in corners of aircraft hangars while her father cleaned toilets for minimum wage. Thursday, 2 days away. The demonstration that would make or break Sophia Hart's tenure as CEO. The event with Pentagon brass and defense contractors and enough brass and stars to weigh down an aircraft carrier. The moment when a $400 million prototype would either prove Vanguard Aerospace remained the leader in military aviation or explode in a fireball that would make the evening news and sink the company. 2 days to figure out what Owen Foster wanted. 2 days to decide whether staying invisible was still possible. 2 days before everything changed. Marcus closed his eyes and tried not to think about how many times he'd stood at similar crossroads. How many times he'd told himself, just keep your head down and get through today. How many times he'd convinced himself that being invisible was the same as being safe. The bus rumbled on. Lily drew her jet engines. Traffic moved with the sluggish inevitability of a river that had forgotten it was supposed to reach the ocean. Marcus thought about Sophia Hart's face when she realized he had been right. About Derek Kane's smile, that calculating, predatory expression that said he had already figured out how to weaponize this situation. About Owen Foster asking, how did you know, with eyes that had already guessed the answer. The truth was in his service record. buried under classifications and redactions, hidden behind bureaucratic walls designed to make certain things disappear. Captain Marcus Cole, 82nd Medical Battalion, flight surgeon and pilot, Silver Star for valor. 23 confirmed saves under fire in conditions that sent other men running for bunkers and therapy. The truth was in the scars running from his wrist to his elbow, raised tissue that doctors said would fade but never had, shrapnel from a hospital bombing in Kandahar. 3 wounded soldiers he'd thrown himself over, using his body as a shield because he was the only one not actively bleeding out. Surgery performed with hands that were losing sensation by the minute, nerve damage that ended both careers, surgical and aviation, in the space of 60 seconds. The truth was in the discharge papers. Honorable, permanent disability, unable to perform precision duties due to peripheral neuropathy. Thank you for your service. Here's a pension that doesn't cover rent. Here's a handshake and a pat on the back. Here's a life that doesn't fit anymore. The truth was in Elena's death certificate, complications from childbirth. Internal bleeding the doctors caught too late because she'd been too tough, too stubborn, told them the pain was normal even when it wasn't. Marcus had been in physical therapy when she died, learning how to hold a cup again, how to button his shirt, how to accept that the hands that had saved 23 lives couldn't save the one that mattered most. The bus stopped at their apartment, 2-bedroom unit in a complex that advertised luxury living but delivered roaches and water pressure that gave up halfway through a shower. Marcus and Lily climbed the stairs. Elevator had been broken for 2 months. Super kept promising to fix it next week. Next week never arrived. Their door was 3rd on the left. Deadbolt he'd installed himself because the original lock could be picked by a determined 12-year-old. Inside smelled like the pozole Mrs. Rodriguez had brought over yesterday. Their neighbor, 73 years old, survived on Social Security that wouldn't cover cat food but still found ways to feed the whole floor. Marcus had tried to pay her back. She'd threatened to hit him with her cane. They'd settled on him fixing things around her apartment. Leaky faucets, stuck windows, the TV that only got 3 channels unless you held the antenna at exactly the right angle. Lily went straight to the kitchen table, started drawing again. Marcus watched her for a moment, this child who'd somehow become his entire reason for breathing, this 9-year-old who absorbed his pain without complaint and never asked why they couldn't afford things her classmates took for granted. "You eat dinner?" He already knew the answer but asked anyway. "Mrs. Rodriguez brought soup. She said you looked tired yesterday and I needed to make sure you ate too." Marcus smiled despite the weight pressing down on his chest. "I'll thank her tomorrow." "Daddy." Lily looked up from her drawing. Her eyes were Elena's eyes, that exact shade of hazel green that changed with the light. "Are you going to lose your job?" "No, sweetheart. Everything's fine. But that lady was so mean to you, and you didn't do anything wrong." Marcus crossed the room, crouched beside her chair, ignoring the protest from knees that remembered jumping from helicopters, running through hostile territory, carrying wounded men who outweighed him by 40 pounds. "You know what my mom used to tell me?" He hadn't talked about his mother in years. She died when he was 16, aneurysm, 1 minute making dinner, the next minute gone. She said that how people treat you says everything about them and nothing about you. Lily frowned, processing. "But that lady treated you bad. Does that mean she's bad?" "No, it means she's going through something hard. Doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains it." He tucked a curl behind Lily's ear. "That lady just lost her father. She's trying to prove she's strong enough to run his company. Sometimes when people are that scared, they lash out at whoever's closest. Do you forgive her?" Marcus thought about Sophia Hart's face when Owen confirmed the valve was reversed. The terror in her eyes when she realized she'd almost killed everyone at that demonstration. The way her hand had trembled when she gripped the workbench. "I think I do, sweetheart. I think I do." Lily hugged him then, 9 years old, arm barely reaching around his chest, face pressed into his shirt that smelled like industrial cleaner and airplane hangar. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart." His voice caught, more than all the stars in the sky. He put her to bed an hour later, read her a story about a girl who learned to fly, some picture book he'd found at a thrift store for 50 cents, pages dog-eared by previous readers, spine cracked from love. Lily's eyes grew heavy halfway through. By the last page, she was asleep, breathing even, notebook tucked under her pillow like a talisman against bad dreams. Marcus sat in the dark living room. The apartment was quiet except for the usual sounds, neighbors arguing through thin walls, traffic on the street below, the refrigerator humming its death rattle. He stared at his hands in the dim light from the street lamp outside. The scars were faded now, barely visible unless you knew to look. But he could still feel them, still felt the moment the shrapnel tore through flesh and nerve, the moment everything changed. Kandahar, 2009, the hospital bombing that ended everything. He'd been a flight surgeon with the 82nd Medical Battalion. Not just a doctor, a pilot too. Learned to fly during downtime because a crew chief named Rodriguez said he had steady hands and quick instincts. Got his wings unofficially. Flew combat missions when they were short on pilots and long on bleeding soldiers who needed medevac right now. Not in 20 minutes when official channels could scramble a crew. The bomb had been a suicide vest. Taliban fighter dressed as a patient detonated himself in the waiting area while Marcus was stitching up a sergeant who'd taken RPG shrapnel to the leg. The explosion collapsed half the building. Marcus threw himself over 3 wounded soldiers, felt the shrapnel tear through his arms, knew even as it happened that his hands would never be the same. The military gave him a silver star. The doctors gave him a diagnosis: permanent peripheral neuropathy, career ending. The Air Force gave him an honorable discharge and a pension that didn't cover half his bills. Lena died 3 months later. Complications from childbirth. Marcus was still in physical therapy, hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold a cup of water, couldn't hold her hand, couldn't say goodbye. He came home to a daughter he'd never met and a life that no longer fit. His phone buzzed. Marcus pulled it from his pocket. Another text from Owen Foster. I was at the military gala in 2012. I shook hands with every survivor in that room. Third from the left. Same build, same jawline, same scar. Marcus stared at the message. Owen had been at that gala. Marcus remembered it vaguely, some Pentagon event honoring survivors of the Kandahar bombing. He'd gone because they'd made it clear attendance wasn't optional for anyone who wanted their discharge to remain honorable. Stood in a receiving line for 3 hours, shaking hands with politicians and generals who thanked him for his service while looking past him toward their next photo opportunity. He typed back, "That man doesn't exist anymore." Owen's response came fast. "The hell he doesn't. That man just saved this company. Tomorrow, 5 a.m., we need to talk." Marcus turned off his phone, sat in the dark trying to remember who he'd been before Kandahar, before Elena, before Lily, before 5 years of pushing a mop and pretending the past didn't exist. Captain Marcus Cole, flight surgeon, combat pilot, 23 confirmed saves, Silver Star recipient, the man who flew into a sandstorm in Nevada that killed 6 other pilots because Jonathan Hart, Sophia's father, had radioed that he had a daughter waiting at home, and Marcus had thought about his own unborn child, about Elena's belly swelling with life, about all the fathers who deserved to come home. That mission hadn't been official, hadn't been authorized. Marcus had been part of a training exercise at Nellis Air Force Base. Jonathan Hart's private jet went down during a demonstration flight. Storm came out of nowhere, winds hitting 60 knots, visibility 0, radio chatter full of pilots retreating to wait it out. But Marcus heard Jonathan's voice, calm despite the terror underneath. "I have a daughter. She's 6 years old. Tell her daddy tried to come home." Marcus had flown into that storm. No instruments could be trusted. No radar penetration. Just instinct and luck and whatever guardian angel watched over fools who thought they could beat physics. Found the crash site by following the smoke. Pulled Jonathan Hart from burning wreckage 30 seconds before the fuel tanks exploded. Jonathan had wanted to give him money, recognition, a job. Marcus refused it all. Just wanted to go home to Elena, to the life he thought would last forever. Now Jonathan was dead. Heart attack 6 months ago. His daughter Sophia was running his company into the ground, convinced that being hard meant being strong, that cruelty was the same as competence. His company, Vanguard Aerospace, employed 3,000 people whose livelihoods depended on Thursday's demonstration succeeding. And Marcus Cole, the man who'd saved Jonathan's life 15 years ago, was mopping their floors and trying to stay invisible. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Marcus pulled up Elena's voicemail, paid $40 a month to keep her phone line active, her voice preserved in digital amber. "Hi, you've reached Elena Cole. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back. And if this is Marcus, I love you. Come home safe." He listened to it 3 times, imagined what she'd say about today, about Sophia Hart's cruelty, about the valve that could have killed dozens, about Owen Foster's text messages and the choice that was coming whether Marcus wanted it or not. Elena would have told him to stop hiding, would have said that medals and scars and disabilities didn't define him, would have reminded him that being enough wasn't about what you accomplished. It was about showing up every day even when showing up felt impossible. But Elena was dead, had been dead for 5 years. And Marcus had learned that the living couldn't afford the luxury of believing in things like enough or destiny or whatever other lies people told themselves to make sense of chaos. He turned off the phone, checked on Lily one more time, still sleeping, notebook still under her pillow, face peaceful in the way only children's faces could be. Went to his own room, lay on the bed without undressing, stared at the ceiling with its water stains and cracks. Tomorrow morning he'd meet Owen Foster at the old hangar. Would try to convince the old engineer that Marcus Cole was just a janitor who got lucky, who happened to notice something nobody else caught, who didn't want trouble or recognition or anything except to keep his head down and his daughter safe. Tomorrow afternoon, Sophia Hart would sit in her father's office and pull every classified file she could find, would discover Captain Marcus Cole of the 82nd Medical Battalion, would see the photograph her father kept in his desk, the one Marcus didn't know existed, would realize the janitor she'd humiliated was the pilot who'd saved Jonathan's life. And Thursday morning, 2 days from now, Derek Kane would make his move, would exploit the chaos, would position himself to take control when Sophia fell, would do whatever men like Derek Kane did when they smelled blood in the water and saw opportunity in crisis. Marcus knew all this without being told. Pattern recognition, survival instinct, the same skills that kept him alive through 2 deployments in 50 combat missions, the same awareness that made him good at saving lives and terrible at living his own. He closed his eyes, didn't sleep, just lay there counting the cracks in the ceiling and wondering how many times a man could fall apart before there wasn't enough left to put back together. Outside, Los Angeles hummed its endless song, 10 million people trying to make it through one more day. 10 million stories of struggle and survival. 10 million souls convinced they were invisible until the moment they weren't. Marcus Cole was about to learn that invisibility was a choice you made until someone else decided you didn't get to choose anymore. Marcus arrived at the old hangar at 4:47 Wednesday morning. The building hadn't been used in years. Rusted corrugated metal, cracked concrete floor, aircraft parts scattered like bones in a graveyard. Dawn light bled through gaps in the walls, casting prison bar shadows across workbenches that hadn't seen tools in a decade. The smell was dust and motor oil gone rancid, metal oxidizing in California's dry heat. Owen Foster sat on an overturned crate near the back wall, thermos of coffee in his hands. 63 years old, but looked older in this light, gray beard catching the amber glow, face lined with decisions that kept him awake at night. His limp was more pronounced in the cold morning air, that helicopter crash in '86 still extracting payment 37 years later. "You're early." Marcus stepped over a rusted engine housing. "So are you." Owen gestured to another crate. "Sit down, we need to talk." Marcus remained standing, old habits from briefings where sitting meant accepting the mission. Standing meant you still had the option to walk away. About what? About why a decorated war hero is pushing a mop instead of running the engineering department. Owen took a sip of coffee. Steam rose in the cold air, dissipating like ghosts. About why a man who saved 23 lives in Kandahar is letting a 34-year-old CEO treat him like garbage. The words landed like punches. Marcus kept his face neutral, body language closed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Owen pulled out his phone, showed Marcus the photograph from the 2012 military gala. Third from the left. From the dress uniform with medals across the chest. eyes already dead despite the smile for the camera. Captain Marcus Cole, 82nd Medical Battalion, flight surgeon and combat pilot, Silver Star for Valor, 23 confirmed saves under fire. Owen looked up. You want me to keep going? Marcus studied the photograph. That version of himself felt like someone else's memory. Younger face, broader shoulders, the confidence of a man who believed he mattered. That man died in Kandahar. The hell he did. Owen stood, his knee popping audibly. I saw your face yesterday, when Victoria threw that mop, when she called you nothing. I saw something wake up. Something that's been sleeping for a long time. You saw a man trying not to lose his job. I saw a pilot. Owen stepped closer. I saw a surgeon. I saw Captain Marcus Cole of the 82nd Medical Battalion, who flew into a sandstorm to save a civilian rescue team and then performed emergency surgery on 3 wounded soldiers while his own arms were bleeding out. The memory surfaced unbidden, sand in his mouth, radio static, the sergeant screaming about blood loss, Marcus's hands slippery with his own arterial spray, nerve endings firing distress signals that his brain kept ignoring because 3 men would die if he stopped. He pushed it down. I'm not that person anymore. You walked into Sophia Hart's office yesterday and told her, in front of 50 witnesses, that her $400 million jet was going to explode. Owen's voice carried weight. That's not a dead man. That's a man who still gives a damn. I give a damn about my daughter. Marcus's control cracked at the edges. That's it. That's all. Owen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted. Less interrogation, more understanding. You give a damn about those pilots who are going to fly that jet. You give a damn about the engineers who will get blamed when something goes wrong. You give a damn about this whole damn company, even though it doesn't deserve you. Marcus looked at the old hangar around them. Vanguard had built its first prototypes here in the 70s, when Jonathan Hart was young and hungry, when aerospace contracts meant innovation instead of bureaucracy. Now it was a tomb for obsolete dreams, a reminder that everything eventually rusted. What do you want from me, Owen? I want you to stop pretending. Owen pulled up military records on his phone, scrolled through declassified mission reports. I spent last night cross-referencing everything I could find. You're not just some janitor who got lucky. You're one of the most decorated combat surgeons in recent history. You flew missions that are still classified. You saved lives that the Pentagon doesn't even acknowledge. And then I got blown up. Marcus's voice went flat. And then my wife died. And then I spent 2 years learning how to hold a fork without dropping it. You want to know what I learned in those 2 years, Owen? I learned that medals don't pay rent. I learned that heroism doesn't keep the lights on. I learned that the only thing that matters is being there for the people who need you. Lily. Lily. The name was armor and vulnerability in equal measure. She's all I have left, and I'm not going to risk losing her because some CEO has daddy issues and some old engineer thinks I should be more than I am. Owen sat back down on his crate. The fight went out of his posture, replaced by something gentler. Nevada, 2010. Jonathan Hart's jet went down in that storm. You saved his life, didn't you? The question hung between them. Marcus could lie, could maintain the fiction, could walk out of this hangar and go back to being invisible. But Owen's eyes held the truth already, just waiting for confirmation. He said on the radio he had a daughter waiting at home. Marcus's throat tightened. I thought about mine, about Elena pregnant with Lily, about all the fathers who deserve to come home. Jonathan wanted to thank you, wanted to give you money, a position, recognition. My understanding is you refused it everything. I didn't need his money. I just wanted to go home to my wife. The memory of Elena pregnant, glowing with that particular joy of first-time mothers, made his chest ache. Wanted to be there when our daughter was born. Wanted a life that felt normal. Owen nodded slowly, understanding the shape of loss even if he didn't know all its contours. Does Sophia know that you're the pilot who saved her father? No. She's looking. Pulled your file yesterday after the valve incident. She's making calls, calling in favors from her father's old Pentagon contacts. Owen's expression darkened. Derek Kane is also looking, and unlike Sophia, Derek doesn't want to thank you. Marcus had met men like Derek Kane in the service. Officers more concerned with advancement than mission success. The kind who made decisions based on career trajectory instead of soldier welfare. They were predictable in their ambition, dangerous in their willingness to sacrifice others. What does Kane want? Control. Owen's answer was immediate. His father worked for Jonathan Hart 30 years ago. Good engineer, made one mistake, approved a part that failed during testing. Nobody died, but the client was furious. Jonathan fired him without severance. Derek's father spent the next 20 years working maintenance jobs, drinking himself to death. Owen paused. Derek climbed to CFO for one reason. He's been waiting for Jonathan to die so he could take everything. Sophia won't let that happen. Sophia is drowning. Owen's assessment was clinical, almost pitying. She's trying so hard to be her father that she's forgotten how to be herself. The board knows it. Derek knows it. He just needs one more disaster to push her out. The pieces clicked into place. Derek Kane at the demonstration, his smile when the valve reversed, his phone already out, calculating, strategizing. He hadn't been surprised by the crisis. He'd been waiting for it. You think Derek sabotaged the valve? I think Derek is capable of anything. Owen finished his coffee, screwed the cap back on the thermos with deliberate precision. I also think you showing up and saving the day ruins his timeline, makes Sophia look competent, makes the board hesitate. He met Marcus's eyes, which means Derek's next move will be to neutralize you. Marcus processed this, threat assessment, risk analysis, the mental framework from missions where failure meant body bags never fully disappeared. What's my play? Come to the demonstration Thursday, not as a janitor, as yourself. As the man who saved Jonathan Hart's life. Owen stood, extending his hand. Stand with Sophia. Show the board that Vanguard still has people who put mission before profit. Marcus looked at the offered hand, thought about Lily waiting at home, about the school 3 blocks from their apartment where she had friends, teachers who knew her name, a routine that felt safe, about the apartment where rent was paid through next month but not the month after, about Mrs. Rodriguez who brought soup and fixed Lily's hair and asked for nothing except that Marcus keep breathing. And if I say no, Owen's hand didn't waver. Then Derek wins. The demonstration fails. Sophia loses the company. 3,000 people, including me, lose their jobs. He paused. And a 9-year-old girl learns that sometimes the right thing to do is hide. The words cut deeper than intended. Marcus thought about Lily's question last night. Is that why you didn't yell back? Thought about what he'd told her about bravery, meaning quiet instead of fighting. Thought about whether he was teaching her courage or cowardice. I'll keep my head down. His voice lacked conviction even to his own ears. I'll finish my shift. I'll go home to my daughter. And when the demonstration is over and everyone's celebrating, I'll be invisible again. That's all I want. That's all I can handle. Owen lowered his hand. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. And if something goes wrong, if they miss something else, then I'll clean up the mess. Marcus walked toward the exit, stopped at the threshold. That's what janitors do. He left before Owen could respond. Outside, the sun was cresting the horizon. California dawn painting the sky in colors that belonged on postcards and tourism brochures. The parking lot was empty except for Owen's truck and Marcus's bicycle. The 10-speed with mismatched tires he'd bought at a yard sale for $40. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Lily is eating breakfast. Take your time. She told me about yesterday. We need to talk. Marcus pedaled home through streets still mostly empty, delivery trucks making rounds, janitors finishing night shifts, the invisible infrastructure that kept Los Angeles functioning while the city slept. He belonged to this world now. The 3 a.m. workers, the people who cleaned offices and restocked shelves, who made $12 an hour and pretended it was enough. The apartment smelled like eggs and toast when he walked in. Mrs. Rodriguez stood at his stove, 73 years old, 5 feet tall, wearing a housecoat that had seen better decades. Lily sat at the kitchen table, homework spread out even though school didn't start for 2 hours. Mijo. Mrs. Rodriguez didn't turn from the stove. Sit. Eat. I'm not hungry. Sit. Eat, not a request. Marcus sat. She placed a plate in front of him, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee that smelled like it cost more than he could afford. He started to protest. She pointed at the plate with a wooden spoon that brooked no argument. Lily told me what happened yesterday. Mrs. Rodriguez sat across from him, her own coffee cup held in hands marked by arthritis and decades of housework. That woman who yelled at you, the boss lady. Marcus ate mechanically. It's handled. She made mi nieta cry. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice went soft, dangerous soft. Nobody makes my Lily cry. Lily looked up from her homework. Abuela, it's okay. Daddy didn't get fired. It's not okay. Mrs. Rodriguez shifted her attention to Marcus. You let her treat you like that? The accusation stung more than Sophia's actual words yesterday. Marcus set down his fork. I didn't let her do anything. I protected my daughter. I kept my job. That's what matters. What matters is that you're teaching Lily it's okay for powerful people to hurt you. I'm teaching her that sometimes you have to swallow your pride to survive. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone had gentled. Mi esposo, my husband, he worked construction for 40 years. White men paid him half what they paid themselves. Worked him harder. Blamed him when things went wrong. She traced the rim of her coffee cup. He swallowed his pride every day. Survived. Provided for his family. She looked up. But mijo, survival isn't the same as living. Marcus had no answer to that. Elena used to say something similar. In the hospital bed near the end, morphine making her words loose but honest. Promise me you'll let yourself want again. You'll let yourself live. He'd promised, had meant it. But living required energy he didn't have, hope he couldn't afford, belief in futures that kept dissolving like California fog under morning sun. I should get ready for work. He stood, carrying his plate to the sink. Marcus? Mrs. Rodriguez's use of his name instead of mijo made him turn. Whatever you decide about that woman, about that job, just make sure you can look at Lily 10 years from now and say you made the right choice. He left for work without responding. The shift passed in mechanical routine. Mop the floors, empty the trash, clean the bathrooms, stay invisible. Except everyone kept staring. Engineers who usually looked through him now tracked his movements. Security guards nodded. Someone had talked. The story had spread. The janitor who'd caught what 50 engineers missed. Marcus kept his head down, pushed his mop, tried to disappear into the work. But at noon, walking past the executive corridor to clean a conference room, he saw Sophia Hart through the glass walls. She sat at the head of a massive table, Derek Kane and 8 board members arrayed like a tribunal. Through the soundproof glass, her face was a mask of control, fracturing at the edges. She glanced up. Their eyes met through layers of glass and corporate hierarchy and everything that separated them. She stood abruptly, walked out of the meeting. The door closed behind her with executive finality. You're still here. Her voice carried that same ice, but now it felt brittle, like frozen lakes before spring thaw. Marcus kept mopping. You didn't fire me. I should have. She stepped closer, the scent of expensive perfume mixed with stress, sweat. Her makeup was flawless, but couldn't hide the circles under her eyes. You humiliated me in front of my entire engineering team. I saved your company. You made me look incompetent. Marcus stopped mopping, met her eyes directly for the first time. You made yourself look incompetent when you threw a mop at me instead of listening. Her hand came up like she might slap him, froze halfway, dropped back to her side. The control she'd been projecting shattered. Her shoulders sagged. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life trying to prove you're good enough? To have everyone waiting for you to fail? Yes. The single word stopped her. She studied him properly now. Not the janitor uniform or the mop or the insignificance she'd assigned him. Actually looked at his face. At the lines that came from decisions made under fire. At scars that extended beyond the visible ones on his arms. Who are you? The question was genuine. I pulled your file. Previous employment classified. That's military. That's government. That's not a janitor's history. I'm nobody, just a man with a mop and a daughter who needs me to come home every night. That's all I am. That's all I want to be. She studied him for a long moment. Something in her expression shifted, calculation giving way to curiosity, armor cracking to reveal the person underneath. My father kept a photograph in his office. Him and a pilot, taken during some military mission overseas. I never knew the story. He never told me. She paused. The pilot in that photo had a scar on his arm, just like yours. Marcus's blood turned to ice in his veins. Jonathan had kept that photograph? After Marcus refused everything? After 15 years? A lot of people have scars. Not like that one. Not in that exact place. Sophia's voice dropped, vulnerability replacing command. My father wrote something on the back of that photograph. I found it after he died. It said, "He saved my life, wanted nothing in return, the best of us." Her eyes searched his face. Was that you? Were you the pilot who saved my father? The conference room door opened. Derek Kane emerged, that predatory smile fixed in place. 42 years old, MIT ring on his finger, shoes that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. His eyes flicked between Sophia and Marcus, calculating angles and opportunities. Sophia, the board is waiting. She didn't move, didn't break eye contact with Marcus. Was it you? Derek's smile widened. He pulled out his phone, angling it to capture both of them, CEO and janitor in unauthorized conversation. Insurance, leverage, ammunition. Marcus picked up his bucket. Your board is waiting, Miss Hart. He walked away. Behind him, Sophia's footsteps followed for 3 paces. Stopped. The conference room door opened and closed. Through the glass walls, he could see her return to her seat, mask back in place. Derek Kane's presentation continued. Whatever numbers he was showing made 2 board members frown. Marcus finished his shift, picked up Lily from school at 3:15. She waited at the gate with her notebook, hair in braids that Mrs. Rodriguez had done that morning. Her face brightened when she saw him. That expression, pure brandy at his arrival, was the only thing that made the day worthwhile. Daddy, she ran to him, threw her arms around his waist. Mrs. Patterson said you called the school today. She said you asked about transferring me. His heart sank. The call had been exploratory, planning for contingencies. If everything went wrong Thursday, if Derek maneuvered him out, if staying became impossible, other districts, other schools, other places where nobody knew their names. I was just asking questions, sweetheart. Nothing's decided. But why? Her eyes filled with tears she was fighting to control. Why do we have to move again? I like it here. I have friends here. I don't want to start over. They'd moved 4 times in 5 years, following work, following cheaper rent, following the promise that maybe this time, this place, this job would be stable. Each move had chipped away at Lily's foundation. Each new school had cost her friends, routines, the small securities that children needed. Marcus crouched to her level. I know, sweetheart. I know. Because of that lady, the mean one, it's complicated. That's what you always say when you don't want to tell me the truth. The observation was devastating in its accuracy. Marcus took her hands. The fingers that couldn't feel texture anymore still registered pressure, warmth, the pulse of his daughter's heartbeat through her wrists. The truth is, Daddy made some people at work angry. And when you make powerful people angry, sometimes they try to hurt you. But you didn't do anything wrong. You helped them. I know. Then why are they angry? Because sometimes people don't like being helped. Sometimes they'd rather fail on their own than succeed with someone else's help. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing in that way she had, turning over information like stones to examine what lived underneath. That's stupid. Marcus laughed despite everything. Yeah, sweetheart, it is. They walked home hand in hand. Lily talked about her day, the math test she aced, the boy who pulled her hair, the teacher who said her airplane drawings were remarkably detailed for a 9-year-old. Marcus listened, smiled, nodded in all the right places. But his mind was elsewhere, on Sophia's question, on Derek's smile, on Owen's assessment that Thursday would determine everything. That night after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat in the dark living room and dialed Elena's voicemail. Hi, you've reached Elena Cole. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back. And if this is Marcus, I love you. Come home safe. The beep sounded. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Hey baby, it's me. I know it's been a while. I know I should talk to you more, but I didn't know what to say. He paused. The apartment was silent except for the usual sounds. Neighbors through walls, traffic below, the world continuing its indifferent rotation. Something happened today. Something I can't take back. I showed them who I was. Who I really was. And now everyone knows. His voice cracked. The CEO, the engineers, probably the whole company by tomorrow. That wall I built between Captain Cole and Marcus the janitor, it's down. And I don't know who I am anymore. The words felt inadequate. He tried to find others. You always said I was terrible at hiding. Said my face gave everything away. Guess you were right. He looked at the photograph on the mantle. Their wedding day, both of them young and stupid and convinced love could solve anything. Elena in her white dress from a thrift store. Marcus in his dress uniform. Metals bright and terrible. Neither of them knowing what was coming. The deployments, the bombing, the death during childbirth that would leave Marcus alone with a daughter and damage that extended far beyond physical scars. I miss you, Elena. Miss your laugh. Miss the way you'd hold my hands when they were shaking and tell me everything would be okay. He closed his eyes. I'm trying to be okay for Lily, for us, but sometimes I forget what okay feels like. The voicemail cut off. Time limit reached. Marcus set down the phone and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed 2 minutes later. Text from an unknown number. I know who you are. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning, my office, 6 a.m. before anyone arrives. Sophia. Marcus stared at the message, deleted it, but the damage was done. Sophia knew, or suspected strongly enough that the difference didn't matter. Tomorrow she'd confront him with evidence. Photographs, service records, whatever classified files her father's Pentagon contacts could access. Tomorrow the fiction would end. He typed back, I'll be there. The response was immediate. Thank you. Marcus turned off his phone, checked on Lily, still sleeping, notebook under her pillow, face peaceful. He wanted to preserve that peace, wanted to build a world where 9-year-olds didn't have to worry about moving schools or whether their father's past would destroy their future. But the world didn't care what he wanted, never had. The demonstration was Thursday. Tomorrow was Wednesday. The clock was running out on invisibility. He lay in bed without sleeping, stared at the ceiling's water stains and cracks, counted them like sheep, lost count, started over. The night stretched interminably, minutes becoming hours, hours becoming the eternal present, tense of insomnia where past and future collapsed into one endless moment of anxiety. At 2 a.m. his phone buzzed again. Different number. Text message in careful English. Captain Cole, this is Agent Rodriguez, FBI. We need to discuss Derek Kane's activities. Call me at this number. Urgent. Marcus sat up. FBI, Derek Kane. The pieces weren't connecting yet, but the shape of something large and dangerous was forming in the negative space. He called the number. A woman answered on the first ring, voice professional, alert despite the hour. Captain Cole? It's just Marcus now. Understood. My name is Agent Sarah Rodriguez. I'm with the FBI's white-collar crime division. Papers rustled in the background. We've been investigating Derek Kane for 6 months. Securities fraud, insider trading, corporate sabotage. We have evidence but need testimony from inside Vanguard to make charges stick. Marcus's mind raced. Why are you calling me at 2 a.m? Because Derek Kane just shorted 2 million shares of Vanguard stock. If Thursday's demonstration fails, stock price drops, Kane makes $50 million. She paused. We also have evidence he accessed Vanguard's flight control systems at 2:47 a.m. last night. We believe he plans to sabotage the demonstration. The valve. Derek had reversed the valve. Not incompetence, not oversight, deliberate sabotage timed to look like engineering failure. Insurance policy in case Sophia survived her father's death. Financial collapse guaranteed either way. Company reputation destroyed or company literally destroyed. Derek couldn't lose. What do you need from me? We need you at that demonstration. We need eyes inside who can identify sabotage when it happens. We need someone who understands the aircraft well enough to testify in federal court. Agent Rodriguez's tone shifted. Your service record is exemplary, Captain. Your expertise is exactly what we need to stop Kane before he kills people. Marcus thought about Lily, about school 3 blocks away, about Mrs. Rodriguez bringing soup, about Elena's voice preserved in digital amber telling him to come home safe. I'm not a captain anymore. I'm a janitor with a daughter who needs her father. I understand, but if Kane succeeds Thursday, Vanguard collapses. 3,000 people lose their jobs, including you. And Kane walks away $50 million richer. Agent Rodriguez let that sink in. We can protect you, witness protection if necessary, but we need your help. I'll think about it. We don't have time for thinking. Thursday is 36 hours away. Her voice hardened. Derek Kane has already killed 3 people in the last 2 years. Whistleblowers who threatened to expose his schemes made them look like accidents. Suicide, heart attack, car crash. Pause. He's escalating. If that demonstration goes wrong, we're talking dozens of casualties. Pentagon brass, senators, civilians. The weight of it pressed down like atmosphere at depth. Marcus had made decisions like this before. Life and death measured in seconds, success and failure separated by millimeters. He'd gotten good at compartmentalizing, at pushing down fear and doubt and the small voice that said, "You're not qualified for this." But that was Captain Cole, the man with medals and clearances and authority. Marcus the janitor had no authority, had nothing except nerve damage and a daughter and the desperate need to stay invisible. I'll be at the demonstration. His voice surprised him with its steadiness. I'll watch. If I see something wrong, I'll act. But I'm not making promises about testimony or a federal court. My daughter comes first. Fair enough. Agent Rodriguez sounded relieved. I'll have agents on site Thursday. Plain clothes. If anything happens, look for a woman in a red jacket near the viewing platform. That's me. Code word is Nevada. She paused. Thank you, Captain. It's just Marcus. No, sir, it's not. She hung up. Marcus sat in the dark holding his phone. FBI, sabotage, murder, $50 million. Derek Kane's smile suddenly made terrible sense. Not just ambition, but sociopathy, the willingness to burn everything if it served his purposes. And Marcus was supposed to stop him. A janitor with nerve damage and a daughter. A man who'd spent 5 years running from his past. A ghost who'd just been dragged back into the light. He didn't sleep, watched the ceiling until dawn. Got up at 5:30, made breakfast for Lily, cereal and orange juice, because cooking required energy he didn't have. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked at 6, ready to walk Lily to school. She took one look at Marcus and frowned. You look terrible, mijo. Didn't sleep well. What happened? Marcus couldn't tell her. Couldn't explain about FBI agents and stock fraud and demonstrations that might explode. Couldn't burden a 73-year-old woman with problems that weren't hers. Just work stuff. I'll handle it, Mrs. Rodriguez studied him with eyes that had raised 5 children and buried a husband and survived more than Marcus would ever know. Whatever you decide, just remember that Lily needs a father who's alive more than she needs a father who's a hero. The words followed him to Vanguard. He arrived at 5:55. Sophia's office was on the top floor, corner suite with windows overlooking the runway where Jonathan Hart had tested his first prototype 40 years ago. The door was unlocked. Sophia sat behind a desk that could have landed aircraft, documents spread across its surface like evidence at a crime scene. She looked up when Marcus entered, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back but not as severely as usual. The armor was cracking. Underneath, she was just a woman trying not to drown. Close the door. Marcus closed it, stood by the wall rather than sitting in the chair she gestured to. Old habit from briefings where sitting meant accepting orders. Sophia pulled out a folder, set it on the desk between them. I spent all night pulling strings, calling in every favor my father left me. Pentagon contacts, CIA friends, People who owed Jonathan Hart their careers. She opened the folder. Captain Marcus Cole, 82nd Medical Battalion, flight surgeon and combat pilot. Silver Star for Valor received after the Kandahar hospital bombing, where you shielded 3 wounded soldiers with your own body while performing emergency surgery. The photographs were there, service records, mission reports with sections redacted, but enough visible to reconstruct his history. Marcus stood silent, watching his past laid out like an autopsy. 23 confirmed saves under fire, flew missions that are still classified, received honorable discharge with full disability pension after medical evaluation determined peripheral neuropathy prevented continuation of surgical and flight duties. Sophia looked up. The file also mentions Nevada, 2010. Civilian rescue during unauthorized flight. Pilot's name redacted, but timeline matches perfectly. She stood, walked around the desk, stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her blue eyes, far enough that she wasn't invading his space. That was you. You saved my father's life. Marcus could deny it, could maintain the fiction one more day, but lies required energy and he had none left. He said on the radio he had a daughter. I thought about mine. Sophia's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face. No elegant single tear, but the messy crying of someone who'd been holding it together too long. She covered her mouth with her hand, turned away, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry. For the mop, for the things I said, for treating you like you were nothing when you're... I'm not anything special. I'm just a man trying to raise his daughter. You're the man who saved my father, who gave me 15 more years with him. She turned back, mascara running, professional mask completely gone. Do you know what that means to me? Do you have any idea? Marcus thought about Lily, about 15 years of drawings and questions and moments that accumulated into a life, about how much he'd give for 15 more years with Elena, about how 15 years was both everything and not nearly enough. Yeah, I think I do. They stood in silence, 2 broken people recognizing each other's fractures. Outside, dawn light was painting the runway gold. Thursday's demonstration would happen there in 30 hours. Right now, in this moment, there was just grief and gratitude and the strange intimacy of shared loss. Sophia stepped forward, hugged him. The embrace was awkward, uncertain. 2 people who'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. But it was real, her shoulder against his chest, his arms slowly encircling her. 2 strangers bound by a dead man neither had been able to save in the end. I'm sorry, she whispered it into his shoulder. I'm so sorry. I know, me too. The door burst open. Derek Kane stood in the threshold, smartphone already raised, camera capturing everything. His smile was triumph incarnate. Well, isn't this cozy? Sophia stepped back from Marcus, composure reassembling itself in real time. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara into war paint. When she turned to face Derek, her voice had found its edge again. Get out of my office. Derek's smile didn't waver. He tapped his phone screen, the soft click of a saved photo audible in the sudden tension. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, I've just come from a very productive conference call with Senator Morrison's office. They have concerns about your leadership, about your judgment. What did you do? I did what you couldn't. I protected this company. His eyes flicked to Marcus, dismissive appraisal that lasted half a second. I also did some digging into your janitor friend here. Found some very interesting things. Things that I'm sure the press would love to know. Marcus stepped forward, body positioning itself between Derek and Sophia without conscious thought. Old instincts from convoy protection, identify the threat, establish defensive position, prepare for escalation. Leave her out of this. Oh, I'm afraid it's too late for that. Derek pulled up something on his phone. 1 call, that's all it takes. 1 call and every news outlet in the country knows that Vanguard's CEO has been conspiring with a washed-up veteran, that she ignored her engineers and took advice from a man who mops toilets. His smile widened into something surgical. How do you think that will play? How do you think the board will react? Sophia's hands clenched at her sides. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Derek took a step into the office. Your father built this company on reputation, on trust, on the belief that Vanguard represented American excellence. He gestured at Marcus. This man represents failure, disability, someone who couldn't hack it in the real military, so he's playing janitor in a place that builds real weapons. The words were designed to wound. Derek had done his research, found the psychological pressure points, weaponized them with the precision of someone who'd spent years studying how to hurt people efficiently. Marcus felt the old rage stirring, the same anger that had gotten him through Kandahar, through Elena's death, through 5 years of humiliation. But rage was a tool, not a master. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. You want a story? His voice came out calm, too calm, the kind of quiet that made Derek's smile falter. I'll give you a story. Marcus rolled up his right sleeve. The scar gleamed under fluorescent light, raised tissue running from wrist to elbow, the kind of damage that told stories to anyone who knew how to read trauma. Beside it, faded but still visible, the tattoo he'd gotten after earning his wings. 82nd Medical Battalion. Wings spread above a caduceus. Below it, in inscript small enough to require close reading, Primum non nocere. First, do no harm. This is the 82nd Medical Battalion, the unit that saved 23 lives in Kandahar while our hands were bleeding out. The unit that flew missions your security clearance couldn't even dream of. Marcus stepped closer to Derek, closing the distance with each word. You want to call the press? Go ahead. Tell them about the janitor. Tell them about the washed-up veteran. He pulled out his own phone, showed Derek the photograph Owen had sent, the military gala, the medals, the faces that proved everything. Then tell them all of it. Tell them about the Silver Star recipient, the combat surgeon, the pilot who saved Jonathan Hart's life in a sandstorm that killed 6 other aircraft. Marcus's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but carried more threat than shouting ever could. Tell them every detail and see how that story plays. Derek's face went white, not pale, white, the color of someone who just realized they'd miscalculated catastrophically. One call, Derek, that's all it takes. One call, and every news outlet in the country knows that Vanguard's CFO tried to blackmail a decorated war hero, a man who saved the founder's life, a man who's been quietly protecting this company while people like you tried to destroy it. Marcus leaned closer. How do you think that will play? How do you think the board will react? The phone slipped from Derek's fingers, clattered on the polished floor. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. The predatory confidence had evaporated, replaced by something approaching panic. Sophia's voice cut through the silence like a blade finding cartilage. Get out! Derek stumbled backward. This isn't over. Yes. Marcus didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. It is. Derek fled. The door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the windows. In the silence that followed, Sophia leaned against her desk, hands gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Thank you. Her voice was small, nothing like the CEO who'd thrown a mop 2 days ago. Don't thank me yet. Marcus pulled down his sleeve, covering the evidence of who he'd been. Derek isn't done. Men like him never are. He'll regroup, find another angle, come back harder. Then what do we do? Marcus thought about Agent Rodriguez's call, about sabotage stock trades and demonstrations rigged to fail, about $50 million and 3 bodies made to look like accidents. About Derek Kane's smile, not ambition, but something colder, more willing to sacrifice anything that stood between him and what he wanted. We survived Thursday. Everything else comes after. Sophia pushed off from the desk, straightened her suit. The armor was rebuilding itself, crack by crack. The board meets in an hour. They're going to vote on my leadership. Derek will push for my removal. She met Marcus's eyes. Will you stand with me when I tell them who you are? What you did? The question hung between them. Marcus thought about Lily at school right now, drawing in her notebook during free period. About Mrs. Rodriguez walking her home at 3:15. About the apartment where rent was paid through next month and invisibility had kept them safe for 2 years. If I do this, there's no going back. Everyone will know. The press, the Pentagon. Everyone who spent 5 years not caring that Captain Cole existed will suddenly care very much. I know what I'm asking. Sophia's voice steadied. But I also know that my father trusted you with his life, and I'm asking you to trust me with yours. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened the photo album he never looked at. Elena on their wedding day, Lily as a newborn, moments preserved in pixels because film had felt too permanent. Found the picture he needed, showed it to Sophia, Lily at the beach last summer, 9 years old with sand in her hair, and joy written across her face. The only photograph where she looked completely happy, untouched by the knowledge that they were poor, that her father was broken, that the world was harder than it should be. This is what I'm risking. Not my life, not my reputation. Her. His throat tightened. If this goes wrong, if Derek finds a way to hurt me, she's the one who pays. Sophia looked at the photograph for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone making a promise she intended to keep. I will protect her, whatever happens. Whatever this costs, your daughter will be safe. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. She pulled out her phone, typed rapidly. I just transferred $100,000 to an account in Lily's name. Trust fund, managed by my personal attorney. Even if Vanguard burns to the ground, even if I lose everything, she's taken care of. Marcus stared at her. Why? Because you gave me 15 years with my father. Tears started again, but she didn't wipe them away this time. Because I owe you everything and money is the only thing I have that might matter. The board meeting was a firing squad conducted in business casual. 12 members sat around the conference table. Gray hair, expensive watches, faces that had seen Marcus mopping their floors and never once registered his existence. Now they studied him like he was evidence in a trial, trying to reconcile the janitor with the service record Sophia had distributed. Derek Kane sat at this far end, recovered composure rebuilt into something brittle. His smile was gone. In its place, calculation. Senator Morrison sat to Sophia's right, 60 years old, Texas accent, the kind of political operator who measured every word against re-election polls. He'd been Jonathan Hart's friend for 30 years. Whether that friendship extended to Jonathan's daughter remained unclear. Miss Hart, Morrison's voice carried the false warmth of practiced diplomacy. This is highly irregular, bringing a maintenance worker to a board meeting. Captain Marcus Cole, Sophia's correction was steel wrapped in silk, Silver Star recipient, the man who saved my father's life 15 years ago, the man who, 48 hours ago, prevented a catastrophe that would have killed everyone at Thursday's demonstration. Murmurs around the table. Derek leaned forward, hands folded in front of him like a priest preparing to deliver bad news. With all due respect, Sophia, we've only got this man's word that there was any danger. Our engineering team found a minor installation error, yes, but calling it catastrophic seems dramatic, almost convenient. His eyes flicked to Marcus, especially convenient for someone looking to manufacture relevance. Owen Foster spoke up from his position against the back wall. I ran the simulations myself. At altitude, that reversed valve would have caused exactly the cascade Captain Cole described. Pressure feedback leading to combustion chamber failure between minute 3 and 5. We would have lost the aircraft and everyone within 100 yards of the test platform. Simulations can be manipulated to prove anything. Derek's tone stayed reasonable, but his eyes were cold. The question we should be asking is why Miss Hart is so desperate to believe a janitor over her own engineering team. Why she's meeting privately with him at 6 in the morning. Why she's hugging him in her office. He tapped his phone. The photograph appeared on the conference room screen. Sophia and Marcus embracing, her face buried in his shoulder, his arms around her. Out of context, it looked intimate, inappropriate, exactly what Derek intended. Sophia's face flushed. That photograph is misleading. I was thanking Captain Cole for what? For doing his job? Derek stood, pacing now, building momentum. Or perhaps for something else. Gentlemen, ladies, I hate to say this, but we need to consider the possibility that Miss Hart's judgment has been compromised, that she's making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense. You son of a... Owen started forward. Marcus raised his hand. Owen stopped. The gesture was small, but carried authority that made the room pause. Military bearing. The kind that came from briefing generals, from commanding respect without raising your voice, from knowing that credibility came from what you'd done rather than what you claimed. Mr. Kane is right. You should question Miss Hart's judgment. Marcus stood, drawing every eye in the room. You should ask why she trusted her engineers when they told her everything was fine. Why she approved deadlines that made mistakes inevitable. Why she created an environment where people were too scared to admit problems. Sophia's eyes widened. This wasn't the defense she'd expected. You should ask all of that, Marcus continued, and then you should ask yourselves why it took someone from outside your bubble to see what 50 engineers missed. Why the man mopping your floors knew more about your aircraft than the people you pay 6 figures to build it. He rolled up his sleeve again. The scar, the tattoo, the evidence of a life most of these people couldn't imagine. I flew jets for 7 years, performed surgery in combat zones, saved 23 lives under conditions that would have sent most of you running for shelter. I didn't lose those skills when I lost the ability to feel texture with my fingertips. I just lost the credentials that made you think I mattered. The room was silent. Even Derek had stopped moving. Here's what I know about your company. Your engineering team is brilliant but overworked. Your safety protocols are comprehensive but ignored when deadlines loom. Your culture rewards speed over accuracy, confidence over caution, credentials over competence. Marcus met each board member's eyes in turn. That valve was reversed because someone was rushing. Someone was scared to admit they needed help. Someone thought looking incompetent was worse than being wrong. Senator Morrison leaned back in his chair. And you think Sophia can fix this? I think she's the only one who can, because she's the only person in this room who admitted she was wrong, who listened when someone told her the truth even though it humiliated her, who changed her mind based on evidence rather than pride. Marcus turned to Sophia. That's not weakness. That's the only kind of strength that matters. Derek's control finally cracked. This is absurd. We're taking leadership advice from a janitor who saved your founder's life. Marcus's interruption was quiet but absolute. Who identified sabotage in 3 seconds that your entire team missed? Who's been watching this company fail for 2 years while people like you played politics? He stepped toward Derek. You want to talk about judgment? Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about stock trades, about accessing flight control systems at 2 a.m, about 3 whistleblowers who died in convenient accidents. Derek's face went from white to gray. I don't know what you're talking about. FBI agent Rodriguez does. She's been investigating you for 6 months. Securities fraud, insider trading, murder. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed the text message. She's very interested in your plans for Thursday's demonstration. The room exploded, board members shouting over each other, Morrison pulling out his phone, Owen Foster smiling like Christmas morning, Sophia staring at Marcus with an expression somewhere between shock and gratitude. Derek backed toward the door. This is slander. I'll sue you for what? Telling the truth? Agent Rodriguez walked into the conference room. Red jacket, FBI credentials held up for everyone to see. 2 more agents flanked her, hands near their weapons. Derek Kane, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy to commit corporate sabotage, and 3 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of Whistle. Derek ran, pushed past the agents, out the door, down the hallway. The agents pursued, but Derek had a head start and desperation on his side. Footsteps echoed through Vanguard's executive level, expensive shoes slapping on polished floor, then stairs, then the main hangar where 300 workers stopped mid-task to watch the CFO sprint toward the exit. Marcus was already moving. Old instincts from pursuit training, calculate the angles, predict the destination, cut off escape routes. Derek was heading for the parking lot. Had to be. His Mercedes was parked in the executive space closest to the building. If he reached it, he'd have a minute's head start before FBI vehicles could mobilize. Marcus hit the emergency exit, burst into California sunlight. Derek was 50 yards ahead, fumbling with his key fob. The Mercedes chirped. Door unlocked. Derek yanked it open. Marcus didn't think, didn't calculate risk or odds or consequences. Just ran. His knees screamed protest. Too many jumps from helicopters, too many miles carrying wounded. Didn't matter. Derek was getting away. Derek would disappear into whatever hole rich criminals disappeared into. Derek would hurt more people. 30 yards. 20. Derek slid into the driver's seat. Engine roared to life, German engineering waking with a predator's growl. Tires screeched as Derek threw the transmission into reverse. Marcus reached the car, grabbed the door. Derek saw him, eyes wide with panic and rage. Floored the accelerator. The Mercedes shot backward. Door still open, Marcus's hand still gripping the frame. Physics took over. 200 pounds of human versus 3,000 pounds of automobile traveling 20 miles per hour. Marcus held on for 2 seconds. Then momentum won. His fingers lost their grip. He flew backward, hit the asphalt hard enough to see stars, slid 6 feet before friction stopped him. The Mercedes screeched around the corner. Gone. Agent Rodriguez ran up, weapon drawn but nothing to shoot at. She knelt beside Marcus. Are you hurt? Marcus inventoried damage. Road rash on his palms, bruised hip, possibly cracked rib. Nothing that wouldn't heal. He'd survived worse in places where medical care meant whatever you could improvise from a combat medic's kit. I'm fine. He sat up despite Rodriguez's attempt to keep him down. He's getting away. No, he's not. She pointed to the parking lot exit. 2 FBI vehicles were blocking the only way out. Derek's Mercedes screeched to a stop. He tried to reverse, but Owen Foster had pulled a Vanguard truck across that path. Derek was boxed in. He got out of the car, raised his hands. The fight drained out of him in real time, shoulders sagging, face collapsing into something that looked almost relieved. Maybe he was tired of running. Maybe the game had been more exhausting than winning would have been worth. FBI agents swarmed. Handcuffs clicked. Miranda rights recited. Derek didn't resist, just stood there while his entire world ended, staring at nothing. Rodriguez helped Marcus to his feet. That was stupid. Yeah, but effective, she smiled. We've been chasing Kane for 6 months. You brought him down in 48 hours. I didn't do anything, just told the truth. Sometimes that's all it takes. She gestured to the ambulance pulling up. Get checked out. You're probably going to need stitches. Marcus looked at his palms, blood seeping through roaded rash deep enough to see dermis. His work shirt was torn at the shoulder, fabric embedded with gravel. Lily was going to lose her mind when she saw him. The paramedics cleaned and bandaged him, nothing requiring hospital attention, just damage that would hurt for a week and scar for longer. He'd add these marks to the collection, catalog of bad decisions and good intentions, proof that sometimes the right thing to do involved bleeding. Sophia found him sitting on the ambulance bumper, hands wrapped in gauze. She'd shed the blazer. Her hair had come loose from its perfect arrangement. She looked more human than he'd ever seen her. Derek is in FBI custody. The board voted to keep me as CEO, unanimously. She sat beside him. Senator Morrison called it the most dramatic board meeting in 30 years. Glad I could help. You did more than help. You saved this company. Again. She was quiet for a moment. The board wants to offer you a position. Director of Safety Operations. 6-figure salary. Your own team. Real authority. Marcus thought about it. About credentials and offices and the kind of life he'd stopped imagining 5 years ago. About Lily asking, "Can I work here someday?" And him finally being able to say yes with pride instead of quiet desperation. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. Sophia pulled an envelope from her pocket. But you should know, your daughter's trust fund isn't just money. It's also a scholarship fund. Full ride to any aerospace program in the country when she's ready. My father would have wanted that. Marcus's throat tightened. He'd spent 5 years figuring out how to pay for Lily's present. Never let himself imagine her future beyond surviving to 18. Now someone was offering her the scholar. Thank you. Thank you. She stood, offered her hand. For my father, for me, for all of it. He shook her hand. Partnership. Not employer and employee, not hero and damsel, just 2 people who'd survived because they'd figured out how to stop fighting each other. The rest of Wednesday dissolved into bureaucracy, FBI statements, HR paperwork, a press conference where Sophia announced Derek Kane's arrest and thanked the vigilance of our entire team without mentioning names. Marcus stayed in the background, invisible again, but this time by choice rather than necessity. He picked up Lily at 3:15. She took one look at his bandaged hands and burst into tears. "Daddy, what happened?" "I fell down. I'm okay." "You're not okay. You're bleeding." She grabbed his hand, the left one less damaged, and held it like she could heal him through will alone. "Mrs. Rodriguez says you need to be more careful." "Mrs. Rodriguez is right." They walked home. Marcus tried to explain what had happened in terms a 9-year-old could process. Bad man at work. Daddy helped stop him. Everything was fine now. She listened with the expression children got when they knew adults were protecting them from truth. "Are we going to move?" "No, sweetheart. We're staying right here." "Promise?" "Promise." Lily hugged him then, careful of his injuries but fierce in the way only children could be, absolute in their conviction that love could fix anything. Marcus held her with bandaged hands and thought about Elena, about how she'd promised him that being enough wasn't about what you accomplished, how he'd never believed her until now. That night after Lily was asleep, Marcus called Agent Rodriguez. She answered on the first ring. "How are the hands?" "Sore, I'll survive." He paused. "What happens now, with Kane?" "He's cooperating, already gave up bank accounts, communication records, names of accomplices." She sounded tired but satisfied. "We'll need your testimony. Probably a grand jury in 6 weeks. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about standing in a federal courtroom, about cameras and reporters and the end of any remaining anonymity, about Lily having to understand that her father's past was now public record. "Yeah, I can do that." "Good, because Kane's lawyer is already building a defense, trying to paint him as the victim of corporate conspiracy. Your testimony, your credentials, that's what makes this case bulletproof." "What about the other charges, the murders?" "Harder to prove, circumstantial evidence. But the securities fraud and sabotage, we've got him dead to rights." She paused. "You did good work, Captain." "It's just Marcus." "Keep telling yourself that." She hung up. Marcus sat in the dark living room, pulled up Elena's voicemail one more time. "Hi, you've reached Elena Cole. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll call you back. And if this is Marcus, I love you. Come home safe." The beep sounded. Marcus smiled. "Hey, baby, big day today. That thing I told you about, the wall between who I was and who I am, it's gone. Completely. Everyone knows now, the CEO, the FBI, probably half of California by tomorrow morning." He paused. "I thought that would feel terrible. Thought exposure meant vulnerability. But you know what? It feels like breathing. Like I've been holding my breath for 5 years and finally remembered how to exhale." He looked at the photograph on the mantle. Elena smiling, Marcus in uniform. Two people who didn't know what was coming but had faced it together until they couldn't. Lily's got a scholarship now. Full ride to any aerospace program in the country. She could be an engineer, a pilot, anything she wants. You'd be so proud of her. She's so much stronger than I ever was. His voice caught. "She gets that from you." The voicemail kept recording. Marcus searched for words that would encompass everything, gratitude and grief and the strange relief of finally being seen. "I don't know what happens next. The company wants to hire me. The FBI wants my testimony. And I have to figure out how to be Captain Cole and Marcus the father at the same time. How to let people see me without losing myself." He closed his eyes. "But I think I'm ready. I think I've been ready for a while. Just needed someone to remind me that being enough isn't about being invisible." The voicemail cut off. Time limit reached. Marcus set down the phone and realized he was crying. Not grief this time. Something else. Something that felt almost like hope. His phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. "Demonstration is still scheduled for Thursday. Would you consider attending, not as a janitor, as our guest of honor?" Marcus stared at the message, thought about the Apex prototype on the runway, about Pentagon brass and defense contractors in the moment when Vanguard would prove itself or fail completely, about standing in front of cameras, visible, accountable, real. He typed back, "I'll be there." Thursday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Marcus dressed carefully, khakis and a button-down shirt Lily had helped him pick out from Target last year. Not a suit, not a uniform, just clothes that said he was trying without pretending to be something he wasn't. Lily watched him from her doorway. You look different. Different good or different pin? Different Daddy, she smiled. I like it. Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on making breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. She studied Marcus over the rim of her cup, eyes seeing everything he wasn't saying. Whatever happens today, mijo, just remember that Lily doesn't need a hero. She needs a father who comes home. The words followed him to Vanguard. The parking lot was packed. News vans, military vehicles, cars with government plates. Security had tripled. Marcus showed his temporary badge, the one Sophia had arranged, and was waved through to the VIP section. The hangar had been transformed. 300 guests seated it in precise rows. Pentagon generals with stars on their shoulders. Senators calculating how this would play in campaign ads. Defense contractors already negotiating before they knew if the prototype worked. And cameras. Dozens of cameras broadcasting to networks that would turn this into evening news or disaster footage, depending on the next 60 minutes. Sophia found him before the presentation started. She'd gone full CEO today. Designer suit, hair perfect, mask firmly in place. But her eyes held warmth that hadn't been there Monday. You came. I promised. I want you to sit in the front row. Next to Senator Morrison, show everyone that Vanguard has people who understand what excellence really means. Marcus thought about refusing, about staying invisible one more day. But that option had died when Derek Kane took his photograph, when Agent Rodriguez called him captain, when Lily looked at him this morning and said, you look different like Daddy. Okay. The presentation began at 10 o'clock. Sophia delivered the opening remarks. History of Vanguard, Jonathan Hart's legacy, the future of American aerospace dominance. She was brilliant, confident without arrogance, passionate without sentimentality. Her father would have been proud. Then came the demonstration. The Apex prototype was wheeled onto the test platform. $400 million of engineering, sleek and dangerous, painted in colors designed to make radar weep. Engines powered up with a roar that vibrated through concrete and bone. Pressure readings displayed on massive screens, temperature gauges, fuel flow. Every system monitored, broadcast, scrutinized by people whose expertise Marcus respected. 90 seconds. Everything perfect. Engineer smiled. Sophia's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Senator Morrison leaned over to whisper, Jonathan would have loved this. Then alarms screamed, red lights cascading across the monitor wall, pressure spike in the secondary fuel line. The same problem from Tuesday, but different source. Not the valve, that had been fixed. Something else. Something Derek had planned as backup in case his first sabotage was discovered. Owen Foster shouted from his position at the control station, auxiliary pump override, someone's bypassing the safety interlock remotely. Marcus was already moving, not thinking, not calculating, just moving. The auxiliary pump housing was on the far side of the test platform, locked behind safety barriers because regulations said civilians couldn't access active test equipment. Marcus vaulted the barrier. Security guards yelled for him to stop. He ignored them, reached the pump housing. The manual release valve had been welded shut. Derek's insurance policy, making remote shutdown impossible. Marcus grabbed a wrench from the nearest tool cart. Owen appeared beside him, tool bag in hand. I'm too old for this. Then go back. Like hell. Owen pulled out a cutting torch. You break it, I'll burn it. They worked in synchronized chaos. Marcus attacking the welded valve with leverage and fury. Owen cutting through metal that should never have been sealed. Heat built around them, not fire, not yet, but the warning signs of combustion about to cascade. Smoke rising, alarms multiplying. The valve broke free. Marcus spun the release. The auxiliary pump shuddered, coughed, died. Pressure readings dropped. Alarms fell silent one by one. For 3 seconds, there was victory. Then the damaged fuel line ruptured. Not explosion, just failure. Fuel spraying across hot metal, igniting instantly. Fire bloomed across the test platform. Not Hollywood fireball, but industrial disaster. Chemical flames spreading with mechanical efficiency. Marcus heard the scream before he processed what it meant. Then his brain caught up, and the world contracted to single terrible focus. Lily. She stood on the far side of the flames, 20 feet away, but might as well be 20 miles. 9 years old with her notebook clutched against her chest, eyes wide with terror. She'd come to see Daddy at work, had snuck away from Mrs. Rodriguez, had wanted to watch her father be important. Now she was trapped. Marcus didn't hesitate, didn't assess risk or calculate odds, or think about nerve damage and scarred lungs and being the only parent Lily had left. Just ran into the fire. The heat was instant and absolute, skin blistering, uniform melting. Every nerve that still worked screaming, abort, abort, abort. He didn't stop. Couldn't feel texture, but could feel heat. Couldn't sense pressure delicately, but could force his hands to grip. Couldn't perform surgery, but could run. Could reach his daughter. Could wrap his body around hers and become the shield, because that's what fathers did when their children were burning. He scooped Lily into his arms. She was screaming, crying, the notebook forgotten. Marcus tucked her face into his shoulder, covered her as much as possible with his own mass, turned back toward the exit. The fire had spread. The path he'd taken was gone. Only smoke and flames, and the choice between staying still and burning or running blind and maybe surviving. Sophia's voice cut through the chaos. "Marcus, this way! Follow my voice!" He ran toward the sound, blind faith. The same way he'd flown through sandstorms, trusting instruments he couldn't see, believing in navigation systems he couldn't understand, accepting that sometimes survival required faith instead of certainty. 10 feet, 5, 3. He burst through the flames and collapsed on concrete floor. Lily still clutched in his arms. Fire suppression systems activated. Foam raining from ceiling sprinklers. Chemical cascade designed to smother industrial fires. The flames died. Emergency vehicles screamed. Paramedics swarmed. Marcus refused to let go of Lily until he was absolutely certain she was breathing. Unhurt. Safe. Then his grip loosened and medical professionals pulled her gently away. She reached for him, crying, "Daddy, don't leave me." "I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere." But his vision was graying. The adrenaline crash hit like physics. Sudden, absolute, body-demanding payment for running through fire. Paramedics were talking to him, checking vitals, radioing for transport. Their voices faded into white noise. The last thing Marcus saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Lily's face. Scared but alive. Crying but breathing. Everything he'd fought for contained in 9 years and 40 pounds of human being who needed her father to wake up. He woke up 8 hours later in a hospital room. Lily was asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand holding his bandaged one. Sophia stood by the window, still in her ruined designer suit. Owen Foster sat in the corner, gray beard singed, face lined with exhaustion. Marcus's throat felt like he'd swallowed razors. "Lily?" "She's fine." Sophia's voice was gentle. "Not even minor smoke inhalation. You got her out in time." "The demonstration?" "Destroyed. The prototype is scrap metal. Pentagon is furious. Defense contract is dead." She turned from the window. "But you saved 27 lives." The fire spread to the viewing platform. "If you hadn't shut down that pump, hadn't warned everyone to evacuate, we'd be counting bodies instead of losses." Owen cleared his throat. Derek had 2 backup plans. The valve was obvious. The pump override was subtle, programmed to trigger at 90 seconds, long enough to lull everyone into thinking the demonstration was succeeding. He really wanted us dead. He's facing attempted murder charges now. Sophia sat in the chair opposite Lily. "Multiple counts. The FBI has everything. Your testimony, my testimony, security footage. He'll die in prison." Marcus processed this, thought about Derek's smile, about men who valued money over lives, about how many times he'd seen that calculus in other faces, insurgents who saw civilians as acceptable losses, officers who saw soldiers as statistics, bureaucrats who saw anything as justifiable if the spreadsheet balanced. What happens to Vanguard? Sophia was quiet for a long moment. The board met an hour ago, decided to rebuild. Use the disaster as proof that our safety culture needs overhaul. Senator Morrison is pushing for emergency funding to develop a new prototype with proper oversight. She smiled. It looked genuine. They also voted to create a new position, Director of Safety and Training, six-figure salary, full authority to implement whatever changes necessary. They want you, Marcus. He looked at Lily, still sleeping, face peaceful in the way only exhausted children managed. Thought about her scholarship fund, about schools 3 blocks away, about Mrs. Rodriguez bringing soup, about the life he'd built from invisible scraps. I'll think about it. Fair enough. Sophia stood. But Marcus, that wasn't a request from the board. That was an order from me. I need you. This company needs you. Her voice cracked. My father would have wanted you here. She left. Owen stayed, settling back into his chair like he planned to keep watch until Marcus dismissed him. You're a stubborn old man. Marcus's voice was rough, damaged by smoke. Takes one to know one. Owen smiled. You planning to take the job? I don't know. Lily needs stability, needs normal, needs a father who doesn't run into burning buildings. Lily needs to see her father be who he really is, captain and janitor and father all at once. Owen leaned forward. You taught her something today. That sometimes the right thing to do is terrifying. That courage isn't absence of fear, but action despite it. That fathers protect their children even when protection means scarring. Marcus looked at his hands. New bandages covering new burns layered over old scars. Evidence of decisions made in seconds that echoed for lifetimes. Lily stirred, opened her eyes, saw Marcus awake, and burst into fresh tears. Daddy, you're okay. I'm okay, sweetheart. She climbed onto the hospital bed, careful of his injuries but desperate for contact. Marcus held her, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. The only thing that had ever mattered. The only victory worth claiming. You saved me. Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. That's my job. No. She pulled back, looked at him with eyes too old for 9. Your job is mopping floors. You saved me because you're my daddy, because you're a hero. Marcus wanted to protest, to explain that heroes were people in movies, that he was just a broken man who'd gotten lucky. But Lily was looking at him with absolute conviction, the kind of faith children had before the world taught them differently. Maybe we're both right. He kissed her forehead. Maybe I can be both. 3 months later, Marcus stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Hart Cole Training Center. 6,000 square feet of classrooms, flight simulators, and workshop space. A place where veterans could transition to aerospace careers, where underprivileged kids could learn to fly, where anyone who'd been told they weren't good enough could prove otherwise. 32 students had enrolled in the first class. James Torres was among them, 25 years old, Afghanistan veteran, both legs lost below the knee. He had heard about the program from news coverage of Vanguard's disaster, had driven 200 miles to apply. Marcus had accepted him on the spot. The audience held 300 people, Pentagon representatives, local politicians, families of students, and in the front row Lily, 10 years old now, hair in braids, holding a sign she'd made, My daddy builds dreams. Sophia handed Marcus the microphone. The crowd quieted. He looked at their faces, expectation and hope, and the belief that maybe this time, this place, this opportunity would be different. When I started this journey, I believed my best days were behind me. His voice carried across the open space, stronger than it had been in the hospital. I was wrong. My best days were just ahead. I just hadn't found them yet. He gestured to the building behind him. This center isn't about me or Sophia or any single person. It's about all of you. Every veteran who's been told you can't. Every kid who's been told you're not smart enough. Every dreamer who's been laughed at for wanting something you weren't supposed to want. He found Lily in the crowd. She was smiling. The stories of failure and loss and being told you're not good enough, those stories don't end here. They begin here, because now you have something you didn't have before. Proof. Proof that you can fall and get back up. Proof that your past doesn't define your future. Proof that you're enough. James Torres stood in the front row, walking on prosthetic legs he'd taught himself to use, standing straight, proud. I've flown jets and saved lives and received medals I rarely wear. But the bravest thing I ever did wasn't in a cockpit or operating room. Marcus's voice caught. The bravest thing I ever did was pick up that mop every day for my daughter. The bravest thing was admitting I needed help. The bravest thing was learning that falling isn't failure. It's the first step toward getting back up. The applause started softly, built until it filled the space. 300 people on their feet. Marcus looked at them and saw himself reflected back. Broken people learning to stand. Invisible people choosing to be seen. Lost people finding direction. Lily ran up to the podium, hugged him despite the formal occasion. He held his daughter and thought about Elena, about promises kept and promises broken, and the strange way that sometimes both could be true simultaneously. "I love you, Daddy." Lily's voice was muffled against his shirt. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky." The ceremony ended. People lingered, talking, connecting, building the kind of community that formed when people recognized their own struggles in strangers' faces. Marcus shook hands until his burned palms ached, answered questions until his voice went hoarse, stood witness to hope until the sun set and California twilight painted everything gold. Sophia found him as the crowd thinned. "Your first class starts Monday, 32 students. You ready?" "No, but I'll figure it out. That's all anyone can do." She smiled. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything, for my father, for me, for this. Thank you for giving me a reason to stop hiding." They stood in comfortable silence. Partners, friends, two people who'd survived because they'd learned that strength wasn't about being hard, it was about being honest when being honest was terrifying. Marcus drove home with Lily. Their apartment, the same one they'd lived in for 2 years, felt different now. Not bigger or nicer, just lighter. Like someone had opened windows and let in air that had been trapped too long. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting with dinner. She hugged Marcus, careful of his healing burns, kissed Lily's forehead. The three of them ate together, pozole and tortillas, and conversation that ranged from Lily's school project to Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson visiting from Arizona to Marcus's plans for Monday's first class. Later, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat in the dark living room, pulled up Elena's voicemail, listened to her voice one more time. Then he deleted it, not because he didn't miss her, not because the grief had vanished, but because he'd learned that holding on to ghosts meant never moving forward. Elena would have wanted him to move forward. His phone rang. "Sophia, sorry to call so late, but there's something you should know. The Pentagon approved funding for a new Apex prototype. They want Vanguard to build it, and they want you to oversee safety." Marcus thought about it, about second chances and new beginnings, and the strange way that sometimes disaster cleared space for something better to grow. When do they need an answer? Take your time, but Marcus, this is it. This is the chance to rebuild everything, to show the world that experience and character matter more than credentials, to prove that the invisible deserve to be seen. "I know. I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up, sat in the dark thinking about choices and consequences, and the weight of deciding not just for himself, but for everyone who'd believe his decisions meant something. Through the window, Los Angeles hummed its endless song. 10 million people trying to make it through one more day. 10 million stories of struggle and survival. 10 million souls convinced they were invisible until someone chose to see them. Marcus Cole had spent 5 years being invisible. Now he stood at the threshold of visibility, terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Tomorrow he'd decide whether to step through. Tonight he'd just sit in the dark with his daughter sleeping nearby and remember that being enough never meant being perfect. It just meant showing up, again and again, even when showing up was terrifying, especially then.